WikiLeaks.
These WikiLeaks emails confirm what those of us here today have known all along.
As her own team has said in WikiLeaks, she has terrible instincts.
WikiLeaks, some new stuff, some brutal stuff. I may not read it to you, but the hell with it. Just trust me, it's real bad stuff. WikiLeaks also shows something I've been warning everybody about for a long time. Hillary had no defense for her secret speeches to Wall Street that she hid from the public and which were exposed by WikiLeaks. Well, I love reading those WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks.
For years, the fate of Julian Assange has been left to speculation. What would a Trump presidency mean for his freedom? Is Assange, who is not a U.S. citizen nor committed any crimes in the U.S., justified in spending years in an embassy out of fear of being extradited and charged in the U.S.? Those questions have been answered by a haphazard copy and paste error in a court document. Trump's Justice Department mistakenly revealed a sealed federal indictment in charges filed this summer, stating no other procedure is likely to keep confidential the fact that Assange has been charged. Attorneys for WikiLeaks have stated they do not believe the charges against Assange are related to the 2016 election, but rather stemming from the campaign to arrest and charge him ever since the historic Iraq war logs put the final nail in the coffin for the U.S. empire in Iraq. While the Obama White House publicly maintained WikiLeaks was a journalistic entity, the Trump administration has redefined the organization a hostile state actor, moving forward with new speed to set an unparalleled precedent of jailing a journalist for standard journalistic work.
It's time to call out WikiLeaks for what it really is. A non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia. Julian Assange and his kind are not the slightest bit interested in improving civil liberties or enhancing personal freedom. They have pretended America's First Amendment freedoms shield them from justice. They may have believed that, but they are wrong. Assange is a narcissist who has created nothing of value. He relies on the dirty work of others to make himself famous. He's a fraud, a coward hiding behind a screen. And in Kansas, we know something about wizards hiding behind screens.
The Washington Post reported the Trump Justice Department has considered several potential cases against Mr. Assange, from the collateral murder video to the 2016 election, including tying Mr. Assange to foreign intelligence services. Inside sources also told the New York Times that in 2017, the CIA began formal espionage operations against WikiLeaks. And for those who were still convinced at the fantastical notion that Trump himself would stand up for Assange against the so-called deep state, he has only mocked those hopes.
Did Julian Assange go free for Justice Department?
I don't know anything about him, really. I don't know much about him. I really don't.
None of this should come as a surprise, given Trump actually called for Assange to be punished before most public officials did. And not just punished, but executed.
Claimant will be on. He's going to talk about WikiLeaks. You had nothing to do with the leaking of those documents.
It's disgraceful.
You do think it's disgraceful?
I think there should be like death penalty or something.
Charging Assange would have a devastating impact on press freedom, one that is without equal in modern U.S. history. The so-called crimes Assange would be punished for are no different than what any media outlet does: publishing leaked, hacked, and classified materials in the public interest, even ones that have been obtained by illegal means. If these secret charges are carried out, it would have an extraordinary chilling effect on journalists everywhere and put them and their sources in the type of danger you would only expect to see in a fascist dictatorship. Assange is not only being targeted by the Trump team, but also by the forces that want to take Trump down. Absurdly blaming Assange for the outcome of the 2016 election, he has become the linchpin to the Russia investigation, which ultimately aims to impeach Trump. Hillary Clinton, who essentially speaks for the Democratic Party establishment, famously called for assassinating Assange with a drone strike. The anti-Trump factions within the FBI and other state agencies have pursued Assange from this angle as well, seeking to connect WikiLeaks to the Trump-Russia collusion story. That could potentially bring new charges for the journalist turned political refugee. Amidst indictments and plea deals in the Mueller investigation, the spotlight has recently rested on one man, Randy Credico, named by Roger Stone as the Trump campaign's back channel to WikiLeaks. Credico is a longtime civil rights activist and former director of the hugely impactful Cussler Fund for Racial Justice, and whose progressive campaigns running for office against Chris Cuomo and Chuck Schumer won him the endorsements of Larry David and Cornel West. But since it was announced that he would again have to face questioning by Mueller and his team, Randy has been ducking the press and told me he's been turning down countless requests for primetime media appearances. I invited Randy to sit down for an interview to discuss all the accusations the corporate press has been making and what the truth really is about his relationship with Roger Stone, WikiLeaks, and the Trump campaign. Most people know you, Randy, from this Mueller indictment and the Russia investigation, but you have a huge, rich history of political activism here. Right. And in fact, you were a political comedian decades before this. I mean, talk about why you first got into political comedy, because that could be a career killer for a lot of people.
Yes, especially if you criticize Israel. You know, if you're critical of Israel. I remember working in 1988, I did this line, the IDF has bombed another Palestinian refugee camp. I said it was a preemptive strike. The Palestinians were stockpiling rocks. So something like that. It's kind of innocuous even, but I got into trouble for that. I lost a gig on the Upper West Side. But I was very political back in the 80s. And then Nicaragua. The whole Contra thing really bothered me a lot. But I was doing political humor. Remember, in 1984, I did The Tonight Show. I could have either plunged into impressions and kind of soft pedal it, or I could go full speed ahead. And I decided to do the latter. And Carson wasn't happy with me. I was really doing well on that show, but I used it to really shit on the genocide that was happening in Central America, whether it be counterinsurgency in El Salvador and what we were doing, Rios Montt in Guatemala. And, I mean, if you're working comedy clubs, let me tell you something, these are not subjects that people give a shit about. So I did a tour with Charlie Clements and Vernon Bellecourt, who was the head of the American Indian movement, about 1986. It was called Reality versus Rambo. And we went around the country supporting Democrats that were against the war in Nicaragua. I even took comedians down there. In 1988, it was called the US Out Show, USO, but US Out Show. And I took 5 comedians. We toured the country in Nicaragua. I was very passionate about it.
And you also made a name for yourself fighting for drug reform. I mean, fighting the Rockefeller drug laws in New York. You spent years in Texas calling attention to mass incarceration in terms of drug laws as well. Talk about why this inspired you so much.
In '97, I worked on an HBO special with a fellow by the name of Richard Belzer. Who's in Law and Order right now, and he's kind of a political guy. And the thing is, at the end of it, there was a lot of drugs being used, and I burnt out on cocaine, and I ended up saying, I got to get out of this lifestyle. And I went down to Florida, and I saw a guy who had been convicted and just spent 12 years in prison for a first-time drug offense. And when I got back, I found the guy, and I said, you know what, I'm going to plunge myself into this. And inspired by the Madres de Plaza de Mayo of Argentina, we organized families of prisoners. We put posters together, went around Rockefeller Center with like 20 people in the beginning. It became one of the biggest movements 2 or 3 years later. Everybody started talking about it because the stories were horror stories. There are people, women, who are doing life sentences with kids for being mules, unsuspecting mules. But they were just grinding out, humanity to keep this prison system in New York State running. And it was all drug. There were 70,000 prisoners, and 30,000 were there for minor drug offenses, and 94% were Black and Latino. So I really got close. I visited 100, I made at least 100 the first 2 years going to prisons. And what else? The other thing that inspired me is my father had done 10 years in prison. In the 30s, before I was born, he was like 18 years old. I heard the horror stories. I'm a survivor. He was a survivor of prisons, and being the child of a survivor of prisons in America, it's tough on all of them. So I organized, got deeply involved in that prison movement, and along the way, there was this drug sting that took place in Texas, this racist drug sting in a little city called Tuya, a city of 5,000 people. Half the adult Black population was arrested. 46 or 50 of the black population It was like so many to selling cocaine to the same person, right? This guy set up his next Klansman, who was a real bad guy. I went to the trial and started burlesquing the district attorney, the judge. I was laughing. They didn't know what to make of me down there. But I got very close to people. I raised money. I called the Tulia Defense Fund. I raised money. I helped get lawyers. I brought down reporters. We did a documentary. Eventually, they were all exonerated, and people don't know me for that.
Right.
It's like I'm not going to go around and say it, but they don't know that I got that background. That has not been aired out there.
You're only useful for one purpose.
Yes. Well, it's sensationalism on most of these shows.
So, Randy, everything kind of blew up for you last year when Roger Stone named you as a back channel for his communication with Julian Assange.
Yes.
So, a lot of people are calling you an associate of Roger Stone's, right?
Yes.
You say that you're not an associate of his. You have known him, however, for 16 years.
Yes.
So this seems like kind of an unlikely alliance here. A left-wing comedian with a GOP operative. Right. So how did this relationship form, and when did you meet him, and why?
Okay, go back to the Rockefeller drug laws. 2002 was a critical year. There was a governor's race in New York State. Pataki wasn't moving fast enough. Talks had broken down for reform. I was in discussions with him. Nothing was happening. The Democratic opponent, Carl McCall, he was for reform, but he had no money. And then I saw this guy on television doing ads, this billionaire by the name of Tom Golisano. And I saw these ads that were really quite interesting. And they were pioneering for the time in New York. They were about medical marijuana and legalizing marijuana. So I went to one of their campaign events, and I said, I need to talk to who is ever running this fucking thing. And that's him over there, and it was this guy, Roger Stone. So I said, oh, jeez, I knew all about this guy, but, let me talk to him. I want to get this. I'm tired of walking on the streets of Manhattan doing vigils and visiting prisons. Let's move this forward. So the guy set up a meeting at Roger Stone's apartment above Mickey Mantle's on 59th Street. And Stone immediately made me a martini. He said 3 things we had in common off the bat. He was into Stolarz dry martinis with olives, although I like onions in them. I did. And cigars. And I was raised on Al Jolson. He was a big Al Jolson fan. And so we talked about that and other things. He was a big pothead and other things. And so we had this great conversation. He said, yeah, he brought me on board. He brought me on board to do ads. They spent millions of dollars on ads, Golisano, and he really got involved in it. And I got to make commercials. I'm getting paid, for making ads. I'm coming up with the ideas. I bring in these families of prisoners. That's how I met the son of a bitch, and Stone. And after Golisano lost, Andrew Cuomo and Russell Simmons reached out to me. They know how popular this movement is, and they wanted to start another movement called Countdown to Fairness. So Golisano kicked in some money. Golisano spoke at this big rally of tens of thousands of people that were there. It was such a big, and everybody showed up, all these celebrities, and did Golisano, and did the Reverend Al Sharpton showed up. Now, the Reverend Al Sharpton had a conversation with Roger Stone for a few minutes. Now, he is running for president. This is 2003, going to 2004. He's running for president, Al Sharpton. Stone asked me to set up a meeting. So I owed him for this Golisano put money into this big movement. And I said, all right, he's always wants something in return. So I set up a lunch date. And the next thing you know, Stone is running the goddamn campaign. Now, he's running the campaign. Now, Stone can think as a left-winger. He knows what he represents. He can think of the opposite of that, practically in a campaign. So he was telling Sharpton to do certain things. I thought I was going to be running that with him, and we were going to talk about prison conditions, and we're going to talk about drug law reform and all of that. He took it over, cynically, and I see where this is going. But it was too little too late because Sharpton, who had insinuated himself into this entire mainstream Democratic opposition against Bush. You would see him as a surrogate now. And he got a major role. He got a major role at the Democratic convention. Sharpton was there. Basically, Stone had him there to scare away people that were on the fence.
So why did Sharpton trust Stone? Because obviously he was, a Nixon operative.
Well, he did not know what to do, Sharpton. You're going to run for president. He's not going to be able to do it on his own. He had to have someone that can get delegates, knows how the system works. I mean, he'd worked on a lot of presidential campaigns. He worked on Dole's campaign in '96 and probably old man Bush in '92. He worked on Nixon's campaign. He worked on Reagan's campaign. A lot of dirty tricks. This was a dirty trick. All right, this is what I didn't realize. I was being used by him, set him up with Sharp, and here I'm like, my God, look what I've done.
So what was the incentive for Stone to get involved in the drug laws?
What was his incentive was he was working on Golisano, spent $100 million on the campaign. Stone is is a libertarian. I mean, he's a libertarian. It's really difficult to pin down. He's a political operative, right? And if some left-winger said to him, look, I need some help, he would know how to do that. Stone would actually know how to run against...
He doesn't have a moral compass.
No,
it's just where the money is.
He knows it was where... If there was money on the left, he'd be on the left. But there's more money on the right, all right? So, and he probably was... Look, his godfather was, I guess it was his godfather, or at least his guru was Roy Cohn, who was a very close friend of Trump. And he was a dirty trickster himself. Roy Cohn, one of these responsible for the Rosenbergs being executed, was a bad guy. He worked with Joe McCarthy. The drug law thing, and he continued with it in some way, Stone. Because, like I said, he's a libertarian when it comes to drugs, and it's probably something personal for him.
What do you mean?
He calls everybody a cokehead, or an alcoholic when he's mad. He calls everybody drug. I can tell you, he should not be saying that, all right? He's the last person that should be talking about those who use powder, all right? I mean, when I was around him in 2002, the first time he said, stop doing that, maybe do something that's a little, that lasts longer, that's just as white, and, he's calling everybody, when he gets mad at them, anybody drops a dime on him, exposes him, I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. I mean, this guy tweeted out that I was dead from an OD in 2011. He actually said that on Twitter and on Facebook in a blast email, and it nearly destroyed didn't destroy my life, but really made my life very difficult.
When did you find out that he was a rat fucker and completely untrustworthy? At that point?
At that point, yeah, I did. What he did there was really nasty. And now I really knew what happened in 2007, what a rat son of a bitch this guy is. He's a real vile guy. Somebody had called up Governor Spitzer's father in 2007, called him up. He's 85 years old. He's got like MS or something. At 3 a.m, left a message saying, you're a rat son of a bitch, your son is going to jail, the sergeant at arms is going to get him in the Senate, and there's not a fucking thing you can do about it, you piece of shit. And that's a nice version of what he said. So Stone, it was on an answering machine, but this is 3 o'clock in the morning when he's doing it, when he's all cranked up. And the next day when it was revealed that this happened, he was working with the state Republican Party Senate re-election campaign. He was their finance chairman. He was their strategist, making $30,000 a month for Joe Bruno. And so he got fired. So he finally comes up with this Hail Mary. Randy Credico, the impressionist, he mimicked me. He did an impression of me and he spoofed my number. The number came up, his phone number came up.
So this wasn't the first time that he's thrown you under the bus?
No, so he said it was me. And he even told me, he says, look, can't you just go along with this? I'm going to lose my $30,000 a month job. I said, no. From 2002, 2007, there were like years we didn't talk, right? So when they say an associate, it's an acquaintance that every so often I'll run into. This thing with Golisano was good. Thing with Sharpton, I made a mistake by introducing to him. I had no idea what his evil intentions were. So, I'm a pushover chump. I trust people. And at this point, people can't figure out what the fuck are you doing with this guy, Stone. There's a lot of little things in between about Stone. I mean, some stories that are interesting stories, but for the sake of time here, I don't think you want to get into them.
Why is Mueller convinced that you are the back channel?
He's not convinced. No, he doesn't think that. I can tell you, he absolutely does not think that. Stone.
Why is that the story?
Why the story? The latest story is that I was brought in, I think, to prove that Stone lied to Congress when he said I was his back channel. He's amended his congressional testimony. In 2000, I think it was that last October, 2017, he went before the House Intel Committee, and he's a big shot. He wanted to be a big shot, wanted to say he had a back channel. He had said that earlier, and he read a 47-page statement, hoping that Trump would hear it about what a witch hunt all of this stuff is. And then, Mr. Stone, your testimony's been great. Can you tell us who your back channel was? No, I made a deal with a guy that I wouldn't do it. He's a journalist. So 2 weeks later, he supplements when they threaten to give him a subpoena. They threaten to give him a subpoena. He says, Randy, I'm going to throw you under the bus, and it's you. I said, well, you said you weren't going to name a back channel. I'm not your back channel. I was not your back channel. Let's be blunt here. Let's be honest here. Why would Julian Assange need to go to Roger Stone? I mean, that's not his MO. If he's going to release something, why would you telegraph it to some fucking political operative and have me, who he doesn't know, get it to him? What would be the point of that? That's the logic. What's the logic in doing something like that? Why would Julian Assange want to tell me that something's coming? I mean, he already announced something was coming in July and in August. He had all this stuff on Hillary Clinton. He already said it, right? He was out there saying this. I didn't know what was coming, and then there was more testimony there, which I didn't even read until recently. He sent it to me. This is my supplemental testimony. And there's nothing in it that's true. They know it. The Mueller people can look at that, and they can take a look at the text messages when they came. In 2016, on September 27th, I went to London. I had Julian Assange on my show for the very first time.
Yeah, talk about how you met Assange through this story briefly.
I knew someone who was a peripheral figure. He's got like 200 lawyers. How did I get connected? The same way Michigan from the idiot in pale Russian society, high society. It's very bizarre what happened here. In the summer of 2016, I asked this woman if she could somehow get a message to Assange, asking him to do my new Thursday night show I was doing for a while. On August 25th, I get an email from someone that works as a secretary for Assange. We have heard that you'd like to get Mr. Assange on your drive time show. And I had about 20 emails going back and forth. I sent them my documentary. I did all this stuff. He didn't know me from Adam, and I didn't know him. So I'm sending him all this material. They've seen this. They know.
Yeah, sure.
This is August 25th. This is the first communication I've had, not with him, but somebody else. Did that show. He did it again 6 months later, but I spent the next 6 months every so often trying to get him on the show. So, I was not getting anything from him at all. And that's the two times. I mean, that's like 6 months apart, right? 6, 7, 8 months apart. I went to London. On September 27, 28, to see a friend of mine, Barry Crimmins. It was a 30-year anniversary that month of us performing together in London. And so it was 30 years later, I said, God, I'm going to go see Barry Crimmins. I'm going to do this. And before I left, the general manager of the station, Berthold Reimers, said, you're going to London, you're going to see Assange. I said, I'm going to try, Although this woman told me, you're never going to get in to see him. I'm bringing this bohemian guy.
Did you see him during that trip?
No. I got to tell you what happens here. So I let them know, the same secretary guy, that I'm coming in to see Barry Crimmins. Would you like to go see him? And I also said I had a letter from the general manager naming me as the ambassador between WBAI and Julian Assange for him to do his own radio show And now remember, this whole time you have to surmise that he is working on the Podesta files, right? Because nobody sees him that whole month. Nobody's seeing him that whole month. I'm there like, I want to be a big shot, produce this radio show, be part of this radio show. So I got this really nice letter, and I got the email from them, everything to adduce to this, that Mr. Assange can't see. He says, but drop the letter off or post it, right? Send it by mail. And so I was a little crestfallen by that. I never got to see Assange. They said, sorry, we can't see you. We'll look at this.
And so you weren't even talking to him during this time.
No, I never spoke to him.
You had just spoken through his lawyers.
So someday that week, they let out the Podesta mail, Podesta files. So Stone, in between that, just prior to that, this is a fundamental part of this. On September 9th, he got me Gary Johnson on my radio show. I said, thank you. It was a pretty good interview. He talked about Assange, this guy, the secretary. They were listening because I was trying to get something out of him to support Assange and Snowden. So he didn't say exactly. I know what they didn't like exactly what Johnson said, but I did ask him about it, about pardons and all this stuff. As I asked Jill Stein about a pardon she would definitely give him a pardon if she was president. So you ask everybody. I asked Stone at one point in a text message, why don't you ask the president if he'd give him a pardon? Anyway, I said, hey, thanks a lot, Roger, for getting me Johnson. I said, is there anything I can do to reciprocate? He says, get me Julian Assange. So I said, well, I've had him on my show, and I used this friend of mine who's a lawyer and all that. And I said, I'll see what I can do. But of course, I would never. But I wasn't going to give him the Stone. Stone is toxic. I didn't even want them to know that I knew him, because Stone is a toxic guy. We later find out that Stone kept mentioning them. I've actually communicated with Julian Assange, all right, way back April 4th at some Republican Broward County convention of Young Republicans for Freedom. So they didn't want. They kept putting out these rebuttals saying, we have never communicated with Roger Stone. They did not want to be connected to this trickster.
Right.
It's not helpful for them. So I did never, ever convey to them that, Roger would like to have you on the show.
In another request by Stone, he tried to get Randy to verify a document supposedly from Libyan intelligence about Hillary Clinton's role in the US-led war for a billionaire named Dr. Paul. Credico firmly denied he ever passed along the request to WikiLeaks, but was aware of the implications receiving it from Stone.
And I sent out something that I sent him a text message. Don't say now. Don't trap me as your fucking back channel. All right? You said you had a back channel just because I said I was going to find out if that was true, which I never did. They never found that. They never verified it. Turned out he was hustling for this guy, this Dr. Paul, and trying to get him to give Roger money to find out if this was true on WikiLeaks. I don't know, something like that. He was doing some kind of peddling, information peddling.
So I wanted to read this last text message that came out that recently broke between you two.
Yeah.
In one message sent on October 1st, 2016, you texted Roger Stone, big news Wednesday, now pretend you don't know me. He says you died 5 years ago. You say, great, Hillary's campaign will die this week. 2 days later, you followed up by saying, I think it's on for tomorrow. Shortly after, you said, why can't you get Trump to come out and say that he would give Julian Assange asylum? Off the record, Hillary and her people are doing a full court press. They keep Assange from making the next dump. That's all I can tell you on this line. Please leave my name out of it. Now, I want to just give you the floor here to say whatever you want to about this thread.
About that thread is all me, none him. Okay, that's an edited thread. I happen to know there are about 15 text messages going back and forth. Everybody who's read those in the news, they know those are edited text messages. They know, I can tell you for a fact, that the Mueller people know how many text messages were sent that day. So they're going to say, well, look, you got 5 text messages, no rebuttal from Stone, nothing else from Stone, and we were playing around there, and I can tell you this, he has deleted That's a one-sided conversation. Where is the other side?
Well, give us the context.
The context is, I'm speculating. Here it is, October 1st. A month earlier, he's on with Megyn Kelly, saying that he has big shit coming out in October. He's with somebody else, and I can't think, maybe RT, was on RT saying he had all this stuff on Hillary was coming out in October, the October surprise. So I'm going to have to answer this.
Right.
I'm going to have to actually answer this, but it looks like he was pressing me. And there's something that that people don't know. He was calling me up, screaming at me, why hasn't Assange put this stuff out? And it was just bullshit banter there.
There's no way for you to figure out the other side of the texts? I mean, because can you see how out of context people would say that does show you working with
No,
Roger?
Because where's all the other text messages that I told him that he's got a big surprise coming in October and it's about to put, there's no, WikiLeaks knew it was bullshit. They put out a statement on this. Credico was playing Stone the same way Stone was playing Bannon. Because Stone was using this kind of stuff to ingratiate himself with the Trump campaign as if he had a back channel. Where was everything else?
Right. And
how the fuck would I know, unless you believe that Julian Assange told Randy Credico, who he doesn't know, to let Roger Stone know so he could tell Steve Bannon and somehow coordinate something with the president? Why would he do that? If he had it, he would just do it at his choosing, at a time of his choosing. I mean, there's no logic.
Well, like you said, Roger changed his story to comply with basically what WikiLeaks has been saying this whole time, that he has been trolling the press, right? Roger Stone's been trolling the press. But then we go back to the tweet that you were just talking about, where Roger Stone says John Podesta's time in the barrel is coming.
Right.
How do you reconcile those?
Well, wait a second. His time in the barrel is coming because...
How did he know that it would be about Podesta?
Well, first of all, when did that come? That came in August, way back in August, that it was Podesta. There's a guy by the name of one of these conspiracy guys that had been going back and forth with Roger. They have all of the emails between the two. This guy by the name of Jerome Corsi. All right, who sent me an email. He sent me an email, guess when? I found it. They know, the Mueller people know that he contacted me.
Since the taping of this interview, former InfoWars bureau chief Jerome Corsi has in fact entered into plea deal negotiations with the Mueller investigation. Corsi himself said he expected to be indicted, as the special counsel believes he is the one who could have tipped off the Trump campaign that the Podesta emails would be coming out. Randy says he can prove that Roger Stone told him he had a secret back channel, vindicating him as the source.
But he told me on September 9th, when he got me Gary Johnson, I said, what can you, I said, I thought you had a back channel. You can get Assange. Why do you need me to do it? Why don't you ask your back channel? And he says, well, you know, he's, I can't use him for everything. You know, I got to use him discreetly. So I said to him, if you have a back channel, so I'm looking back at this Podesta thing, this Podesta deal, and I said, well, somebody told him. And it definitely was Corsi, because that's why Corsi is, you know, an indictment is imminent, because he said he never had any this and that conversations about Podesta's. He says he guessed that the Podesta files were coming. He says that he guessed. They just have to do loose ends, or put loose ends together. If Stone did know, and is it illegal to know? But he definitely needed someone that he could use as a fall guy, and I was being set up for that. Now, it could have been just pure rank braggadocio with Bannon to somehow ingratiate himself with the Trump campaign, which had dumped him 2 years earlier. They got rid of this guy a year earlier. They said, get rid of this guy.
So who's leaking all the text messages to the press, Stone?
Yeah, Stone's doing it right now.
It just seems like he's trying to make you implicated
yes,
here.
Well, he's been saying that he's got 9 different versions. I am not a target. I am I'm not a target of this thing. So if you take a look at June, when he says I gave him information, all through the summer I was giving him updates. Well, where are they? And that's what all the journalists want to know. Where are the updates? Where are the text messages and the emails that would suggest that I was giving them information.
Right.
There's no text messages, there's no emails. There are other emails there where he's trying to get me to get this Dr. Paul information confirmed, which I never tried to. But there's nothing about me saying that Assange has got something. I never did. I never told them anything because I didn't know anything. I had no fucking idea.
Amidst this back and forth, Randy, Stone threatened you and your dog, Bianca. I mean, I know how much this dog means to you. In fact, I'm surprised that he's not here right now. But what was your response?
He threatened me. They have all of the text messages over the last year. I can tell you that. So there's a lot of things happening there. Stone does not want me to testify. Stone takes me out to dinner to try to get me to take the... There's a lot of things I can't tell you that he said to me. He threatens let's get it on. Who's going to be around next year, you or me? People aren't going to believe you fucking bum. And prepare to die. This kind of stuff. Right? And I'm going to steal that fucking dog ears, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's not that I think he's going to steal a dog. What I think is that people who think that Stone is going to get indicted, and then he's going to roll on the president, and they say, well, this guy, and they see the dog thing, they may come over and steal the fucking dog. One of these lunatics on the alt-right, those are the ones I'm afraid. The ones that go and shoot people in Pittsburgh or send out pipe bombs or whatever. There are a lot of lunatics out there, people that go to the Trump rallies, all right, that think that if Stone gets indicted, he's going to roll on the president, which I think he would because the guy couldn't spend 30 seconds in a jumpsuit, all right? So he would, if whatever he has, and he probably has a lot on the president. He's known him for 35 years. Look, I've been told you have to be careful and call up 911 and then call up the FBI if somebody is threatening you. But Stone made a lot of threats. Stone tried to get me to do a lot of things with my testimony. And so he he sent out, he was pissed off, and I went on. I just had to get this, I had to stop it. People were thinking that I helped Trump out, and I was a back channel. I was giving information to Stone. Nothing, not one fucking thing. He got 3 of his friends to come out and say that I told them that I was Stone's back channel. One of them, this guy David Lugo, this guy like laid out like days of how I was telling him about Stone, getting information from me, and I was a back channel, all this stuff. And guess what? It turned out that Stone wrote the fucking article for him.
What a shock.
Stone wrote the article for the kid. And when Stone found out that the guy copped to it, and he testified in front of Mueller, this kid, because they know that there was an orchestrated effort to try to debase me, demean me, smear me, calumny me, whatever the word is, smear me, and this was all part of it. They know it, all right? They're trying to intimidate me. You ought to see the stuff that I get.
No, and Roger Stone is responding to this all over the news, saying you're the one who's threatening witnesses. He's saying that, if you look at the text messages, it's just kind of banter between old friends, right? Look.
That's what he's saying about you. He and I were just old grumpy guys. Yeah.
Just hanging out, threatening to kill each other's dogs.
Well, he's a bad guy. He's a dirty trickster. He will throw his mother under the bus. He would throw his wife under the bus. He would do anything to protect himself. I would tell him to get into some kind of 12-step program. I would try to dig deep into my soul if I was him, because it may be too late for redemption for him, because there's so much in there, and I don't know what created it. So once again, the chump here, I'm the guy being set up. I'm a spectator to Julian Assange's work. I'm a spectator. I'm looking back. I'm at a movie theater watching a movie, and he's trying to make it look like I wrote the fucking movie. I'm watching it with him. He's going to continue to shit on me for the rest of my fucking life.
Right.
That's what's going to happen right now. I can't, after all of these years doing civil rights work, doing political work, my activism from Nicaragua all the way to the Rockefeller drug laws and beyond, that in 2015, I had a movement, and within a year it worked, and that was to get the state and the city of New York comptrollers to divest from private prison companies. They both did. And I got the credit for it. The guy called me up. I spent a year working on that, and they both divested. So that's what I want to be remembered for. I don't want to be remembered. All these liberals think out there that I had something to do with Stone, but I was a spectator with him.
For argument's sake, let's just assume that whatever they're saying is true. I don't understand how that proves or establishes any sort of coordination with WikiLeaks. It's
Right.
two independent actors just speaking to each other.
Right. There's nothing. Look, whatever he.
Which is bizarre that this is what the entire thing hinges on.
A lot of it does right now. Whatever Stone's engagement was, whether it was all puffery. It was all salesmanship. It was, because he's wont to do that.
Right.
I don't know.
How does that prove election meddling, is my question. Having foreknowledge.
Having foreknowledge, I don't know. And being a back channel, I don't know. But listen, there's a mob mentality out there, all right? And people are pissed off because you got an insane guy that's president, and everyone's looking at this saying, how the fuck did this happen? Where are we going to go from here?
Yeah, and let's talk about how it's changed under the Trump administration, because many in Trump's camp, even Fox News right now, are sympathizing to Julian Assange and supporting him. But it seems to me like things have gotten worse for Assange under Trump. I mean, talk about this.
They totally have under Trump. Trump would throw Julian Assange under, like everybody else, he'll throw him under the bus. Everybody around, he's got the most reactionary, neoconservative outfit. It looks like the cast from Dr. Strangelove around him. You've seen the people around him. These are neocons looking for fucking war. They don't like Assange. Pompeo is like the head of the State Department. He called Julian Assange some kind of hostile foreign enemy force or whatever. Can't think right now.
Yeah, the rhetoric has become a lot more assertive, and now we see these charges filed, these secret charges filed, Randy.
Yes.
I mean, here Assange was mocked relentlessly from mainstream pundits for not wanting to leave the embassy. Well, now we know that the threat of indictment was very real, Randy. We have these charges filed. I mean, talk about that.
The UK government and the US government, they want to stop him. They want to stop him so badly. And by putting that out there, the fear of him being sent over here and going to Colorado in one of these maximum security prisons, supermaxes, and having a kangaroo court in Virginia. That's what's going to happen to him. You just have to support him on the principle. If you don't like some of the characters he's legitimized, the point is he's a journalist. Nobody's perfect. I'm like I said, the rest of my life, I will be, in spite of my fucking career as a civil rights activist, I'm going to be identified with Stone somehow. Look, I get attacked now.
Right.
I get attacked now because I've had enough of these alt-right people trying to exploit this.
Right.
Because they're being dishonest, disingenuous. They don't give a fuck about Assange. If Assange had, if they knew that when he gets back into business and he were to put out a whole bunch of stuff on Trump, and torture that continues, and complicity with this guy bin Salman. If he were to do that, they'd disown him.
When asked about his upcoming interview with the special counsel, he had this to say about Stone.
I'm not going to jail for him, and we'll see what happens. I just look. You go when you tell the truth.
Right.
I'm already in. I got to go and tell the truth, and I'm not going to lie just to save his ass.
With Randy eager to clear his name, the case extends well beyond him. And whatever the findings are, for WikiLeaks to be punished would have far-reaching implications. No matter what your opinions are about Assange, Trump, or Russiagate, it doesn't change the fact that WikiLeaks, although unconventional, does what watchdog media has always done. With society barreling towards fascism, world war, and climate catastrophe, silencing those who expose it is a scary thing. And with stakes so high, the fate of one can decide the fate of us all.